Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Krishna C. Nadella, and this is State of Mind at Penn State University, filming from the Delta Chi fraternity. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Krishna C. Nadella, and this is State of Mind. Today's episode is part 2 of our two-part series entitled Sandusky, 5 Years Later. It's been 5 years since the Jerry Sandusky Scandal took place here at Penn State University, and for many alums, including myself, we see the world in two parts, pre- and post-Sandusky. In that time, an entire class of students has graduated knowing and experiencing a very different university than the one that alums like myself may remember. With each passing year, more and more students who enroll and graduate from Penn State help take the university forward from its darkest hour and, more importantly, help shape the way the world perceives it. The purpose of today's episode is to talk about what it means to be a student at Penn State University and how far the university has come since the events of November 2011. With us here today is Penn State Junior and Managing Editor of Onward State, Lexi Shimkonis. Lexi, thanks for joining us on State of Mind.
Thanks for having me.
So, first question, let's help level set our audience. Please provide to me a state of Penn State post-Sandusky.
So when I came to Penn State, I decided to come even after the scandal had already broke. So from my perspective, it is something that every student here is aware of. You know, we didn't have the students that didn't know who Sandusky was and then they found out. Coming here, you knew about the scandal. So you chose to come to Penn State and you for the most part, understood whether or not that played any part in your decision at all. You kind of understood what was happening at Penn State. You've heard about Penn State because of the Sandusky scandal. So that played, to some degree, every student knows about it, which I think is different from people who have graduated because they might not have even known that much about football, Sandusky, Paterno, and they found out as the scandal broke and became bigger and bigger. But for current students, they choosing to come here, I believe for the most part, had a pretty good idea of what was going on, or at least knew to some degree that some big scandal was happening at Penn State.
All right, so for you personally, why did you apply to Penn State and why not go somewhere else?
So for me, the choice to come to Penn State was completely academic. To be honest, I didn't actually want to come to Penn State that much, but I chose to come here because the engineering program is a civil engineering major. The program is phenomenal compared to all the other schools I applied to. And when I got here, the best decision I've ever made. I love Penn State, but no part of me coming here was really about the football team or tradition as much as it was, I knew I wanted a big school and the academics were really what stood out.
So you asked me this question in part 1, so I'm going to throw it back to you. What does Penn State University and Penn State football mean to you right now?
So Penn State University and Penn State football, I see them as different, though they're very much intertwined. Penn State University is waking up every morning, going to class, doing your extracurriculars, going out on the weekends, and being with students. Penn State football involves so much more than that. Penn State football includes all the alumni, all the fans, the teams we play, Beaver Stadium, and that Saturday in Beaver Stadium experience, that game day, tailgating, is separate from waking up to go to your 8 a.m. or studying or, working, doing activities, clubs, fraternities. That's separate from the football team, but they are intertwined because students then take part in that. Students, professors go to football games. I love football. I love going to football games, but they are different aspects that are intertwined. I see it.
Okay. So we talked in the first episode as to how the alums came together post-Sandusky. How has the student body come together in the last 5 years? What is the message that you'd like to give, representing Penn State students, that we can take away from that maybe the national audience doesn't necessarily know because no one's asking?
For Penn State students, it's obviously we didn't have any part in this.
Yeah.
And I think alumni, you said that as well. Alumni, did you know? Of course we didn't know. And Penn State students get that a lot.
Yeah.
I can't believe you covered this up. Of course we personally didn't do that.
Right.
And I think that has a sense of togetherness for all students in that we kind of understand each other. We kind of come together over the fact that people bash us because we go to Penn State, and not really a stigma, but you go to Penn State and people that aren't a part of Penn State see you as this cult, and this, as of the last 5 years, this group that tried to cover up the Sandusky scandal. And so if students came together, I think, over that, because they all obviously understand that, you know, we didn't do this scandal. We didn't know what was going on. We didn't cover it up.
So, not to put words in your mouth, do you feel like there's a guilt by association?
Not necessarily. I mean, to some degree, but I think a lot of students didn't come here because of any of that, or you know, that's not the reason they're here.
Okay, because I do think the sentiment is there that for the public who do not go to Penn State, who do not have family that go to Penn State, it is a little unfair in terms of how it's being casted towards individuals that attend here. Do you feel that's something you have to deal with on a regular basis when you talk to people who don't attend Penn State University?
I've never until this year actually, never personally said, oh, someone goes, oh, where do you go to school? I go to Penn State, and they go, oh, that's, you know, everybody that I've ever talked to about it has said, oh, that's great school. But, you know, this year, especially social media, I just know, for example, seeing, if we can post a story about anything on Onward State, and somebody will comment, you guys knew about, it could be a story about, like, any, like, the basketball team, student government, somebody will comment just because it's Penn State, and they see it come up, and they're like, oh, Penn State, you know, they knew.
Right.
Which, yeah, so I guess there is some kind of guilt by association, and it just comes up in places where it really doesn't belong.
So let's talk about where this attention should be focused on, the leaders of this school. How do you perceive leadership in the academic setting, specifically as it pertains to Penn State? Because we saw many of the top leaders in this institution come down. But now, how do you look at, just generally speaking, people who run large organizations? Does you feel like the Penn State scandal had some effect on how you look at people in positions of power?
I think that when I think about it, I do, because if I look now, President Barron, you know, James Franklin, Sandy Barber, the people that are in those positions now, you can't imagine anything like that happening to them, and I'm sure people had the same opinions, you know, Spanier, Curley, and so if I stop and think about it, you know, I think that could happen. You would hope not, but in the same sense that it did, I guess you just have to kind of stop and check yourself and think that in general, these people in power are just, you know, they're doing their jobs, and whatever, however that happens.
Sure.
You know.
So let's take that thought and run with it. You're the managing editor of Onward State. So you are not just a student, you're a member of the press. What was your opinion of honoring Joe Paterno for his 50th anniversary of his first game coached at Penn State University?
So I can say I've never had my phone just constantly blowing up with Twitter notifications as I did that day. I think that's the first time since I've been on staff that it's just been that much backlash from the public. And I think that the university was so pressured by this small group of Penn Staters that have been really, really hounding them to honor Paterno in some way, that they just kind of wanted to make it stop. So I will say that what they did do at the game wasn't that ridiculous, that they didn't have like big Joe Paterno fireworks. I think they went about it in a more subtle way. I mean, every time when they played the pregame video and they flashed Joe Paterno, students, you know, that's usually what they cheer the loudest. And so I think that the way they went about it wasn't bad, but I think that the university was really quick to give into this small faction of people that really have been pressuring them to honor him in some way.
Right. So to the extent that you can, on behalf of all Penn State students, and I know that's a little bit daunting, what is the general perception? Because I do believe there's two factions within Penn State University, this group that you mentioned, and then the rest of us who are just trying to move forward. What is the general sentiment of Joe Paterno by Penn State students in 2016?
Most students, you know, don't see, I don't want to put this the wrong way. A lot of students see Joe Paterno in a favorable light. You know, whether that means that they, separate from the scandal, they see Joe Paterno as this coach that had 409 wins, and that's just, I mean, I don't think that that's a problem. What he did was great for the football team, for students, student athletes. And I think it's important to remember that, and I think a lot of students have pride in that, and I don't think that's a bad thing.
Okay.
It brings the university together over that, but like I said, people when they play Paterno in that pregame footage, a lot of the students, that's the loudest thing they cheer for, and the stadium in general, and I don't think that's a bad thing. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about you as a student. You're obviously working towards a degree. You obviously want to be employed after you finish college. Have you faced any challenges as a student? Have you faced any challenges personally or even potentially professionally being associated with Penn State University?
Well, professionally, I haven't. Like I said, most of the time when I tell adults that I go to Penn State, whether that be, family, friends, or just people before that I meet in the workforce, working, they say, oh, that's, great school. And I think that professionally, a lot of the people, we have a great alumni base.
Right.
And I don't think that's going to hinder Penn State students getting hired. I don't think it's going to hinder me getting hired. I've never had a problem where I've gone to apply for a job and somebody goes, oh, Penn State, we don't want that in our office.
Right.
I know plenty of people have, and I wouldn't be surprised if it happened, depending on where I choose to go, try and find a job. But I think professionally it could have an impact, but I've never experienced it, and I can see how I might not experience it. I very well hope that I will go through and not have any problems with that.
And that could be a sign of progress, that's not an issue as much as maybe it was in 2011 and 12.
Yeah, I think as we move forward, the university and then also the public, it's not the first thing they think about when they think Penn State, which I think is a good sign and something that I think the university has to continue to build upon.
So, what lessons have you learned? Now, obviously you were not here in 2011, but I have to imagine in your role as managing editor of Onward State, and also just as a Penn State student who's very active in the community, what lessons have you learned that just more importantly helped you mold yourself into the person that you are today? And they don't have to be pertaining specifically to Sandusky, but just life lessons that you've been able to take away from all of this.
I think it's very important how you carry yourself. So, going to different, I feel like this season, or this school year so far, in general, has been more of a public backlash against Penn State for something that I kind of thought had gone away more so. So I think, learning how to carry yourself when a situation does arise, like someone yells something at you because you're wearing a Penn State shirt, and just being able to explain yourself. And it's a shame that we do have to explain ourselves and why we go to Penn State.
Right.
But being able to in a respectful way, I think is important.
So you asked me this question on part one, so I'll throw it back to you because you mentioned reputation. Is the reputation in the court of public opinion that Penn State currently faces deserved? And if so, what do they need to do to counter that? And if not, what are they doing wrong?
I think that it's a little much at this point. There are some people that will not stop coming after Penn State, and the people that go coming after individual people, individually attacking people, personally, as far as, just a student that goes to Penn State, I'm sure some of you guys have experienced that. And then I know writers on our staff have had people just come after them for no good reason. And I don't think that that's necessary at this point to some that extreme degree. And I know that's not everybody, but I think that the reputation of Penn State, even amongst my peers that go to other universities, there's still that cult mentality when you think of Penn State. And I think that the university, there will always be that. I think we had that before the scandal, and now even more so. But to improve upon that, I think that it's going to come down to what the students do. Students do great things here, and we try and promote that, and the students themselves do. And I think it's important to realize those things that students are doing. Student governments do a lot of great things. Student athletes are all over the world representing Penn State, but also their own athletic abilities. And obviously academia, we have people going all over the place to do all kinds of things. So I think that students promoting themselves will be important as to change the perception of Penn State in general.
So I'd like to ask you a series of questions in terms of what advice you'd like to give to. And the first group I'd like to ask you is, what advice would you give to rising juniors and seniors in high school that are considering college options and with regards to Penn State University?
I would say to look at Penn State as the academic institution that it is. It's sometimes easy to think about Penn State in a way that's not only, the Sandusky Scandal, but also Penn State is this huge football school. I know you said that, Penn State is a football school, and it is, and it's also this big school, and, we get pegged a lot as a party school. But Penn State is a great university with a lot of not only great academic options, but just options of whatever you want to do, clubs and organizations, and really anything that you want to take part in here, there's something for that. And I think the students that are considering college should think about that when they think about Penn State. I think it's also, if you want somewhere where you really feel like you're completely immersed, Penn State is a great place because most of the people that you see on the street every day are here for Penn State, whether that be mostly students, professors, people that live in the community because, their spouse is a professor, or their students go here. Every person you see, and that's something really unique to Penn State, I think, that you can't say with a lot of other schools.
Right.
If you're at Pitt, Temple, anywhere else, you are in downtown, and even if you're not downtown, you're in a place where people just live there because that's where they live. The reason that people live in Happy Valley and live in State College is because Penn State is here. So that's, I think, really unique. And if you're really looking for a university experience that fully encompasses you, and some people might not be, but I think that's an important part of Penn State, that it really is a full experience when you're here.
So let's take that to now current students, and we have many in the audience here. What advice would you give to them?
Keep promoting anything that you're doing, represent Penn State well, I guess. I don't really want to tell students what to do because I wouldn't want them to tell me. Yeah, no, I know. But I think that if we all like I said earlier when you first asked me how we kind of come together, we all kind of have the same understanding of what Penn State is, I think, to some degree, and how we've come together after this Sandusky scandal. So promoting what we do and promoting what our peers are doing, I think, is helpful for not only our own perception, but for how others see Penn State and us as students and then eventually working professionals.
Last two, advice to parents?
Parents, well, I know I'd asked you the difference between parents who are first generation and then parents that have been here for years. You always get those students that it's great, their parents came here, their grandparents came here, they only applied to one school,
right,
and they only wanted to come to Penn State. And for those parents, I would say it's important to let the student make sure that they really want to come here, and in most cases they do. But really let them see Penn State as their own thing and not your thing.
Mm-hmm.
But for the first generation parents, don't let the scandal or any other aspect of Penn State steer you away from what your kid wants to do. I think it's really important that parents let their kids figure out where they want to go to college on their own, kind of start to give them that space, because once you're here, it's all you.
Right. And then finally, for alums like myself, what would you like to tell us?
That we're here and you can help us. I think that the alumni base is great, and once you start to get into some of the people that have come to Penn State and then gone out working or volunteering or doing whatever, that I don't think that students see enough what's going on, and the more alums that come back and share their experiences, especially now with the last couple years, how they've dealt with it, how they dealt with public perception, and just tell students about that, share how they've moved forward, how they reacted to certain things, how they got a job, getting away from the scandal, where they applied, anything, and not just working, but in life, we all can bond over Penn State, so we should trickle that down to all the students that go here.
So looking back on the last 5 years, what advice would you like to give to the national audience who's not necessarily tied to this university? What message would you like to give to them as we move forward with Penn State?
As we move forward, I think it's important to not, when something does happen, I know as of late, there's been new things coming out with the scandal, which is always hard. And I think that from people that aren't related to the university, they shouldn't, I know it's going to be hard, something that they might not do is look back at what's happened before, because everyone has their opinion, everyone's biased. And I think at this point, especially with the scandal, everyone's biased. So I would ask that they only look at what's happening and the facts, but it's hard to control that with the university, and I think, speaking as somebody from the media, the national media and even some, outlets that cover Penn State are so quick with scandal news to just have a story about it, have something, have that wow factor to get page views over Sandusky stuff.
Right.
And just step back and look at, objectively what's going on. And I don't think you can have, an opinion on it, but there's a time and a place for that. And I think it's first, as people that cover the university, important to look at it objectively and report accurately what's going on so that the public sees Penn State accurately.
Well, I think, to your point, time is something that heals all wounds. And on that note, Lexi, thank you for your time today on State of Mind.
Thank you so much for having me.
That'll wrap up our show for today. If you like what you saw in today's episode, please feel to like, share, comment, and subscribe on the following social media platforms at the bottom of your screen. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for the time today. And remember, every life is a book.
Make yours a bestseller.
Have a great state of mind.